A very good evening to you. Now, Kenya wants the Assembly of State Parties to revisit discussions on Rule 68 that were conducted during the 2013 meeting. Of course, the government will be lobbying to have a decision to include recanted evidence overturned. That is all an effort to see if indeed they or we can save Deputy President William Ruto and indeed Joshua Arap Sang. Those discussions will begin on 18th of this month. So during this bulletin, we'll be speaking to Kipchumba Murkomen, his Elgeyo Marakwet senator. You need to stay with us for that interview because we need to interrogate and try to find out what really is Rule 68 about and why is there so much fuss about it. This is KTN Prime. Thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at our top stories tonight.
Hatuna haja ya hawa kuja kutuambia njia ya kusuluhisha mambo yetu. We resolved our problems.
Which way Kenya and the ICC? Another threat of a walkout. Waiting for justice. The story of post-election violence victims. The NYS fallout. A green light for the prosecution of Peter Mangiti. Just how long is enough? Why Somali Parliament wants KDF out. Welcome to the program. William Sila is a sign language interpreter. Tonight, you can use the hashtag #SavingWilliamRuto for the conversation that we will be having during this bulletin. And we begin here in Nairobi, where the stage is now set for the first high-profile prosecutions over the National Youth Service saga. The Principal Secretary, Peter Mangiti, and NYS Director, Nelson Githinji, will now face charges in court over the scandal that has rocked the entire government. The Director of Public Prosecutions, Keriako Tobiko, gave the go-ahead earlier today amid growing pressure on the government to crack the whip. But will this latest development calm the nerves of government critics? Dennis Onsarego begins our news coverage tonight.
The scandal at the heart of the devolution ministry, one that has grabbed national attention for months and stirred high-ranking officials, appears to have finally drawn its first blood. The Director of Public Prosecutions, Keriako Tobiko, wants the Principal Secretary for Planning, Peter Mangiti, and the National Youth Service Director, Nelson Githinji, prosecuted. The DPP wants the two high-ranking government officials and 23 others charged for allegedly attempting to block a probe and stealing, where the Ministry of Devolution and Planning lost millions of shillings. The director charges that the two tried to stop a junior officer from reporting suspect transactions in the much-praised Integrated Financial Management Information System that was to enhance transparency and efficiency in public spending. The intended prosecution of the PS Peter Mangiti and NYS Director Nelson Githinji comes in the wake of intense pressure of Devolution Secretary NYS Guru to step aside. The Devolution Secretary had initially denied that any coin was lost in suspect transactions and procurement of goods and services in NYS that ran into millions of shillings. The Cabinet Secretary later admitted that 791 million shillings had been lost in dubious transactions, even though she never mentioned the two officials as being behind the theft.
That there was a conspiracy to defraud NYS 695,400,000 in respect of committed disputed transactions.
It is not clear how the latest plans fits in with the anti-corruption task force set up by President Kenyatta, whose strict timetable was to handing its findings in the next 1 week.
Because I'm committed to total cleaning up of a place where I work. I like clean environment.
Well, I have no further comments to make. Thank you.
For now, Nelson Githinji, Peter Mangiti, and 23 other suspects are likely to face charges of stealing and blocking the NYS investigations. It is a dramatic turn of events at the Devolution Ministry as the Cabinet Secretary NYS Guru prepares to take the stand as a key state witness, an unprecedented scenario where a Cabinet Minister will be testifying against her juniors in a court of law. Denson Sarigo, KTN Prime.
Now to that story of Kenya's bid to stop the ongoing case against Deputy President William Ruto at the International Criminal Court. President Uhuru Kenyatta is now warning the court against what he says is interference with Kenya's reconciliation efforts. The president says Kenya has a plan B if the Assembly of State Parties meeting in The Hague this week fails to resolve Ruto's case.
It is all about William Ruto and to some degree radio journalist Joshua Arap Sang. The battle to get the deputy president off the grip of the International Criminal Court that accuses him of crimes against humanity in 2007 and 2008. And now with another Assembly of State Parties looming, Kenya is seeking to move the member countries of the Rome Statute to stop the court from using previously recanted evidence in the Ruto case. And the over 100 Kenyan MPs traveling to The Hague insist it won't be business as usual.
Hii makesi na ndio mimi naendelea kusema. Wameniwekea mimi, wamewekea Ruto. Jameni na nyinyi mlikuweko. Mwaka huo mliona jina yangu wao ya Mheshimiwa Ruto kwa kura pale. Sasa jameni tunaulizwa nini sisi?
Sisi tunataka kusema namna hii ya kwamba wale watu wa ICC tumeomba hawa watu waachilie. Hiyo koti, they tell us, Your Excellency, it's an independent court. It's going to run affairs based on justice. But Your Excellency, it is the same court that says they read newspapers. The same court says they read Twitter. They read Facebook. They are influenced by WhatsApp. Na ingine inaitwa Telegram. Sasa hiyo court aina gani can be influenced by external factors without looking at the case? Mpaka unaona anatupigia story anasema msiongee mambo ya ICC, msiongee mambo ya ICC kwa sababu they know they are trying to work with local NGOs wenye wako this country, watu ambao hawajachakuliwa na mtu yoyote, na tukipoint out those issues, now they are feeling the pinch because they are doing that in collusion, not looking for the rights and the truths for the people of Kenya.
And the president, who has been on a charm offensive in Ruto's Rift Valley backyard, agrees.
Sisi hatutaki makesi ambaye yanasukumwa na watu wengine kwa sababu ya siasa zao. Na tuasema tutasimama kidete na imara mpaka kesi hiyo imalizike. Na tunaambia inchi marafiki, tafadhalini mjue msimamo wetu kama inchi. Serikali yetu imefanya mengi kuweka Wakenya pamoja. Ni mengi ambaye pia tumefanya kumaliza yale ambaye yalikuweko. Wasiturudishe sisi kwa shida.
This is not the first time Kenya is drawing the line over this case. Previous attempts to get the case out of the court have borne no fruit. And critics have insisted that withdrawing from the court will not serve the interest of justice in Africa. It is not clear how much impact Kenya will have at the Assembly of State Parties, but the Ruto case remains a political headache that refuses to go away. Jogeo, KTN News.
Okay, so that story by Jogeo forms the basis of a big question tonight on KTN Prime. We are asking you, should Kenya withdraw from the ICC? What do you think? There have been lots of arguments for and against it as well. Let us know what you think. Please begin with a yes or no as you send your response to us and use the hashtag #SavingWilliamRuto. Would love to hear what you think on that. Here's the thing. We will have an interview with Kipchumba Murkomen. He's the Elgeyo Marakwet senator, but as in the same breath we'll be speaking to him in his capacity as a lawyer as well, to just get to understand what the fuss is all about, to try and understand why there is such a concerted effort to focus on Rule 68. In the same breath, we understand that Defense Cabinet Secretary Rachel Omamo was lobbying British delegates in London for a good part of today. We'll try and get our UK correspondent James Smart as well to understand how that went along. You need to stay with us for that conversation. I understand we have James Smart on phone. Smart, can you hear me?
Yes, Linda, I can hear you.
Smart. So ahead of the state parties meeting, we understand that Defense Cabinet Secretary Rachel Omamo lobbied British delegates for a good part of the day. Do you have any idea what the discussion was all about?
Well, as you correctly stated there, Linda, the Defense Cabinet Secretary Rachel Omamo, together with other top government officials, certainly I can tell you about Dr. Korea Singre, who works as the head legal advisor to the government as well, and other top government officials have spent the last day, yesterday and today, indeed seeking meetings with top British officials in an attempt to lobby them towards supporting the Kenyan government point of view to either stop the Rule 68 applying on Deputy President Ruto's case, or most importantly, altogether to form a formidable sort of opposition to it, to stop Rule 68 altogether from ever applying on the ICC. That has been the conversation today. Certainly it has been closed-door meetings, and we do not have so much details about exactly the content of that discussion and the nature of those discussions. But as we would be aware, that the British have given them a hearing and they've said nothing about whether they're supporting that or not. From here, the delegation proceeds to The Hague, where they'll spend the next 80 days as well there, and
Smart.
pretty much on the same line.
Smart, you've been following this case for a while now, putting in mind that you're in the United Kingdom. What is the British stand with regard to the cases at the ICC and, of course, the lobbying that is now being done?
Well, the British have been very firm on their stance on the ICC. They are certainly part of the core team of countries that have provided the backbone for the ICC to operate. And their position has always been that these cases must continue, should continue as they are continuing, and give the ICC, the courts, the space and the opportunity for them to go through this legal process. The part of what the FCO have always stood for and said has been that this is a legal case, it's outside the political sphere, and it must be allowed to be dealt with legally. So that stance has never changed, and so far there's no indication that it has changed. And even during the state parties, Assembly of State Parties that was conducted, I think, a year or so ago, the British were part of the countries who were firm by saying that this is a legal process that needs to be allowed to continue to ventilate and end in that case. So it's very difficult to know right now if that position has changed, because the obvious overtures by the Kenyan government, if you like. We cannot certainly say that we don't have a statement from them, certainly not the FCO, certainly not the British Prime Minister, and certainly not the British Parliament, saying the position has changed, that they indeed now want either the Assembly of State Parties or the Rule 68 to be changed, or Kenya to receive a special kind of treatment from the ICC. So as it stands, from observers and from the people that I've talked to, and from the British government and the media, the position remains the same. The cases must be allowed to continue because it is a legal case, and they believe in the sanctity and the credibility of the courts to deal with those issues that are being asked by Kenyan government and definitely the Deputy Ruto's legal team. They're willing and saying these cases and these issues should be dealt with inside the court and not outside the court.
Smart, here's the thing. The training of British tourists on Kenyan soil has been a controversial issue, and this is a story we have been focusing on for a while, and different cards are now being thrown on the table, with some politicians saying if we don't get support from the British government, then we'll also not allow the troops to come and train in Kenya. Do you think that is something that is going to change probably some of the decisions that are going to be made in all this?
I think we'd have to draw from what happened with President Uhuru Kenyatta's case and the kind of strategy that was employed then, and it appeared to be a multi-thorn approach that the Kenyan government decided they would use the legal team, including the Attorney General Githu Muigai, sending him to court, sending him to the Assembly of State Parties, and arguing out a legal case, arguing out, the Kenyan point of view from a legal perspective. But as well, the Kenyan delegation as well, that including Ambassador Amina and the rest, including what had to be the famous story, if you remember, just the first few weeks of the Kenyan government, the Jubilee government getting into office. That was brought to the hustler debt scandal, was that the deputy president and other members of parliament were put on sort of a team to go out and lobby other African countries. Now, this was a political settlement. So we have to draw from that and assume this is the same strategy that is being used. And the best indication we have for that is that BTP advisors who are the team that ran President Uhuru Kenyatta's campaign in the 2013 election are the same ones who've been given this duty today to start lobbying the British public through the British press to talk about this political settlement.
James Smarts, all the way from the United Kingdom, our United Kingdom correspondent. James, always such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much. As we earlier mentioned, we now have Kipchumba Murkomen Elgeyo Marakwet, Senator. He's joining us from our Eldoret studio. Mr. Senator, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Linda.
Okay, you're faint. Could you speak up just a little bit? And here is where we begin this conversation. There is a lot of concern about the use of recanted evidence, and there is all these efforts to try and ensure that this is overturned. Why is there so much concern about this rule?
Our concern is that the overarching concern for us is the fact that the ICC has been changing rules. You know, the rules have been shifted from every time when the case is almost coming to an end, there is a change of rules. And the concern about Rule 68 is the fact that you have a situation where there are witnesses who signed certain statements. Now, when they came to court, or when they were asked to come to court, they denied those statements, they recanted them, and said that really those were false statements. They have not even the courage to face their own statements in court. Now the rules are being changed to mean that such statements, which have not been cross-examined by any lawyer, remember that the prosecution has closed her case. So the fact is that even the lawyers of Ruto and Sang have not had an opportunity to cross-examine those witnesses. Now they are saying that you admit them to be part of evidence as one way of forcing this case to go forward, considering that those people have come out outrightly. Two is that from a legal perspective, and as an international law lawyer who has studied international law, the point is this, that the rule on retroactive application of any law is not acceptable, whether it's in any domestic country, whether it is countries that practice civil law or common law. All over the world, the practice is that you cannot make rules today and apply to situations where that rule was not existent by that time. So the point that was given during the negotiation of ASP was that the rule was not going to apply to Kenya. It was an undertaking that was given by a judge who is sitting at the ICC.
Senator, was that categorical that this rule was not going to be used in the Kenyan cases? Because someone would expect Ruto's defense team to bring this up in court and say, when you were negotiating this was not supposed to be used in the Kenyan case. So far, we haven't seen that. So was that categorical that this was not going to be used in the Kenyan cases?
Linda, you know very well it was brought out in court. Unfortunately, the judges, because now they're using doublespeak, pretended that they were not aware of that undertaking. But we thank God that the Botswana judge has now taken responsibility. She even stepped aside from the case because her conscience was judging her, and she was unable to face that situation because she gave an undertaking on behalf of the judges and the court. Remember, that is an argument that Ruto and Sang lawyers have already made in the court, but the courts ruled against them. And that is why this week we are going to the final institution, which is the Assembly of State Parties, to be able to tell them that they must be able to make that position sanctioned in writing, to make it clear to the whole world and to the court that really the intention of the court was to maintain the standards of international law, which is that you cannot apply a legislation or a law that retroactively.
Hold on, before I bring you to
of one side of the case.
Okay, hold on before I bring you to what you hope to achieve, because you understand that several leaders are making their way to the Assembly of State Parties. But then the judges used Rule 69, subsection 3, which essentially gives the trial chamber the authority to request the submissions of all evidence that it considers necessary for the determination of the truth. Does that make sense to you?
Rule 69, which Judge Osuji tried to apply. Yes. You know, remember, Judge Osuji dissented on 68 and then applied 69. Is basically, in that rule of 69, the idea is that you just take it like any other document for purpose of the record, so that you can be able to refer generally. But the manner in which 68 is drafted is that it would make it almost mandatory that the courts will consider it. But in 69, you just consider as by the way. The effect is not as mandatory as in 68. So the idea of 69, where even the working report was accepted by the court using 69 as a document of general application for general reference. But 68 has more stronger ramifications to the case because it is a question of admitting it as evidence as it is.
Okay, the judge may have used his discretion, but then he cited exceptional circumstances in the Kenyan case, that is the deputy president's case and Joshua Arap Sang's case. He says there are exceptional circumstances in this case that warrants the use of Rule 69, subsection 3. And if I may quote his ruling, he says, in considering the exceptional circumstances that warrant the exercise of the authority under Article 69, subsection 3, it may be helpful to begin with the submission in Ruto's defense papers, saying Ruto and the defense, on Mr. Ruto's instructions, have repeatedly made public pleas for the ICC to be given space to do its work. That is one. And then he says, two matters of significance are apparent from DP Ruto's defense submission. One is its apparent congruence with the prosecution's complaint that there is a concern that third parties holding themselves out as connected to Mr. Ruto have been engaged in actions intended to prevent the appearance of prosecution witnesses. And finally, probably one of the main reasons why he even considered this, he says the conduct in question include high-profile campaigns on the diplomatic front as well as parliamentary debates and resolutions. Notably, the chamber was once constrained to conduct a hearing as to the forensic consequences, specifically in relation to witnesses in this case. And he goes on to say that in addition to the foregoing actions and utterances from government sources, there is information to the effect that community leaders were similarly engaged in public utterances. This is his concern, and why probably this is leading to exceptional circumstances. He says such reported public utterances of community and church leaders and elders, depending on the particular cultural ethos of the given community, may contribute to the chilling atmosphere that witnesses may find intimidating. Do you think the Kenyan cases are an exceptional circumstance?
First of all, Linda, you know, you can even see the language the court is using. It says it may create an environment where it's intimidating.
Maybe in their opinion it is.
The point is that if the court, can you hear me?
Go on.
Yes, I'm saying if the court really thinks that there is anyone who is interfering with witnesses, that is a crime that is actionable under the Rome Statute. First of all, go ahead, bring the case that there is an interference. There are witnesses who are being intimidated. Charge the person who is intimidating those witnesses. Find him at fault. When you complete that process of finding fault on the person who is intimidating the witnesses, use then that evidence to say, as a result of this intimidation, we now want to go ahead and admit this evidence as it is. But you cannot say that on speculation on possibilities, that there is interference with the case, that in that imagination, and they are saying they may intimidate the witnesses, you use that may to go ahead and shall admit another evidence which should not be admitted in the circumstance. That's double speak.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kipchumba Murkomen. Elgeyo Marakwet, Senator, joining us from our Eldoret studios. Thank you so much for speaking to us on KTN Prime. But finally, before I let you go, hold on, Kipchumba. It would be unfair for me to let you go before I ask you this. We understand that several leaders are making their way to the Assembly of State Parties. What exactly do you hope to achieve in this?
Well, our objective is to do two things. One is to be able to make the position of this country scientifically clear, that the court and the ASP parties must be, which is the bigger body that established ICC, must make that clarification very clear to the court that that case, the Rule 68 was not supposed to apply retrospectively. Two is that we are going to demand, going by the manner in which these cases are being processed in the ICC, we are going to demand that the court put in place the independent oversight mechanism, which is provided for by the Rome Statute, so that it can oversight the court itself, because we believe that there is too much interference and gerrymandering in the ICC case.
You've said it yourself. You believe there's too much interference. Thank you so much for speaking to us on KTN Prime. Kipchumba Murkomen, Elgeyo Marakwet, Senator, thank you so much for speaking to us. Let's bring you some breaking news that we're just getting in our studio. Devolution Principal Secretary Peter Mangiti has decided to step aside. Once again, Devolution Principal Secretary Peter Mangiti has Peter Mangiti Githinji has decided to step aside. What we understand, right? Actually, that is the Director General National Youth Service, Dr. Nelson Githinji, has decided to step aside. Excuse me, that is not the Principal Secretary for Devolution, but once again, breaking news that are just getting into our studio. It is there at the bottom end of your screen. The NYS Director General, Dr. Nelson Githinji, that is of the National Youth Service, has decided to step aside. He says today sections of the media have reported that the Director of Public Prosecution, that Keriako Tobiko, recommended that I be charged with misdemeanor of obstructing my deputy, Aiden Gedon Harake, from performing his duties. He goes on to say, it is with a clear conscience that I decide to respect the rule of law and our Constitution, and with my abiding faith in our judicial system, I have decided to step aside as the Director General of National Youth Service. That is the statement from Dr. Nelson Githinji, Director General, National Youth Service. He says, my stepping aside will allow me to focus on protecting my long record of selfless public service. So once again, breaking news that are just getting into our studio. It's crawling at the bottom end of your screen. Dr. Nelson Githinji, that is the Director General, National Youth Service, has decided to step aside. He says his stepping aside will allow him to focus on protecting his long record of selfless public service. And he thanks the President and indeed Deputy President for the faith they gave him in what he called patriotic assignment. He gives them the assurance that in the fullness of time, the judicial process will show that he was faithful to his oath of office and never let them or the country down. Breaking news there at the bottom end of your screen. All right, let's now focus our attention on Machakos. And Machakos Governor Dr. Alfred Mutua has set a precedent by submitting his personal documents for a lifestyle audit. Mutua's supporting documents were received by the Chief Executive Officer of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Halake Wako. Take a look.
It was an unprecedented move, a voluntary submission of documents for scrutiny by the craft watchdog body. Machakos Governor Alfred Mutua is seeking a lifestyle audit, not only for himself, but for the Machakos County staff. The documents contain details of bank accounts, PIN numbers, ID numbers, and their wealth declaration forms, as well as names and phone numbers of their spouses and children above 18 years.
Our country is a poor country. In actual fact, according to the United Nations, we are the 133rd poorest country in the world. And I blame this on corruption. In actual fact, if truth be told, the challenge we face on many areas, from terrorism to dilapidated roads to lack of medicine, are because government officials are busy cutting deals, inflating prices, taking bribes, grabbing public land, and also conniving on how to undercut each other because of money, just stealing from the public.
Fighting corruption is actually a matter that belongs to each and every Kenyan. It is in the recent past very evident that all the Kenyans are making a lot of noise about the level of corruption and also the fact that it is scaling up. But what are we doing as individuals in this country to confront the situation?
Mtua has been at loggerheads with his deputy Bernard Kiala, and it may not come as a surprise that his documents were missing.
The only information that we are missing is that from the deputy governor, Mr. Bernard Kiala, who has, for whatever reason, refused to provide that information to be handed over to the EACC. So we hope that he'll be able to do that because we are not sure what he is hiding.
EACC CEO Halake Wako says it will take 2 to 3 months for the process to be finalized.
It's also been seen that our fight sometimes gets skewed towards running after only the government workers and forgetting so much about the rest of Kenyans who are the main facilitators of corruption processes in this country. So just know that we expect each and every individual, every institution in this country, public and private, that you have a role, you have a responsibility.
Alfred Mtua says his intention is to fight graft, but questions may be raised on whether there could be other hidden motives. Zinzi Kibiku, KTN News.
Borrowers can now breathe easy as Equity Bank backs a banking trend of announcing higher interest rates. The bank says it will not affect the planned increase in interest rates from 17 to 24% that was to take place from Thursday this week. In an exclusive interview with KTN's Abi Agina, the bank's group chief executive James Mwangi said market fundamentals, among them the falling treasury bill rates, had pushed them to make that decision.
Do you feel that a high interest rate regime would spark off a downward trend when it comes to the uptake of loans? And what does this do to an economy like Kenya, which we are seeing a number of SMEs accessing credit and they are able to grow their businesses? What do you make of this?
The reason why we have jumped into these lower interest rates and withdrawal was because of the risk of high interest rates. High interest rates discourage borrowing, and we felt that there were no underlying factors that would cause a country to throw credit to the private sector at a time that the international community is investing in a country. The second one, of course, is the concern of inability, and the proposed rates that we had been forced to give would have increased significantly the strain of repayment, which eventually results into higher default rates. So we are very excited the government acted promptly to stem off the headwinds that were emerging in interest rates. When we proposed to increase the interest rates in October, we based this on the increase in interest rate on treasury bills. We said treasury bills were competing with our depositors, and they had incentivized depositors to seek 22% as a rate of return on their deposit. Unless it's absolutely necessary, we should always keep the same rates stable so that repayment is based on what customers have predicted when they were borrowing or from the analysis. So it is this government reaction that we have responded for, because we don't want to be left out with high interest rates at 24 comparing with the treasury bills at 17.
But the fact that you are set to increase the interest rates, how would this have impacted on consumers, bearing in mind that credit access has been growing in Africa as well as in Kenya, really?
We now anticipate that what we could have lost in terms of deal pipe is now going to flow in, and we expect to see sustained growth rate like was there before the proposed interest increase. We are projecting that the government will continue to lower the interest rates. We are very optimistic that hopefully the 5-year board that the government has announced to will be lazing, will create a better yield curve that is comparable to the reading date.
Thank you, sir.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much. Yeah.
With the increase in lifestyle diseases and the rising sophistication of the Kenyan consumer, more and more people are becoming more careful about what they eat. And one of the biggest winners of this move are fish farmers, as white meat gains favor in most tables. And on the next frontier, this week we visit a farmer in Siaya County who is taking full advantage of this new move and is so far smiling all the way to the bank.
The combination of great aquatic resources and rising health awareness has made commercial fish farming a great business venture and a lucrative source of income for many farmers in Kenya. As a result, numerous commercial fish farms have sprouted throughout the country as they seek to meet the rising demand.
We have a total of 22 ponds, 8 circular ponds and 14 acre ponds.
But one farmer in Siaya County is taking fish farming to the next level, creating a workable business out of the previously untamed swamp. Welcome to Dominion Farms, whose mission is to reduce poverty, transfer technology, and advance what they call sustainable capitalism in Kenya.
So we found out some areas of the swamp that were not very easy to reclaim and put under rice and or other crops. So we decided to dig ponds and then grow fish there.
Dominion is a major producer of fisherlings and has been commissioned by the government to produce 2 million fisherlings per month for sale to farmers in central, western and Nyanza provinces.
Production cycle takes 8 months. Then we expect to have 350 grams to 450 grams.
In addition, Dominion is also supporting development of outgrowers who provide raw ingredients such as soybeans for the farm's new fish feeding plant.
Another driving force is that we are in a community that is fish eating, and we are very acutely aware that there's a lot of depletion of tilapia in Lake Victoria.
The farm has also spent $2.5 million on its breeding program alone as they seek to avoid the pitfalls of inbreeding which has ruined fish farms elsewhere in the world.
We form this as a support base or a fallback. When fish runs down or slow in Lake Victoria, people have access to the food that they like most.
A key feature of the farm is its integrated processes across the fish farming and cropping enterprises, ensuring the benefit passed from the agricultural process to the next. Water from the fish pond is used in the rice fields, while the waste from the rice production is used to feed the fish.
And we also hope that this would help create employment for the next generation in this country.
To date, the project has transformed one of the poorest areas of Kenya and is improving the lives of its current employees and the local community. This has seen demand for fish meat in the country rise steadily, and for those reasons, this large-scale farmer in Siaya County is determined to cash in on that. And with 3.1 million fish in these ponds, Philip Kitany for the next frontier.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with KTN Prime. Let's now take a look at sports. The national, actually after being stranded for more than 6 hours at the Wilson Airport in Nairobi, the national football team Harambee Stars finally flew out to Cape Verde Monday night after a number of issues, including unpaid allowances, were sorted out. However, after government intervention, the team flew and is expected to play the Blue Sharks on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Kenyan time.
Harambee Stars' flight to Cape Verde was supposed to depart at 10:30 a.m. from the Wilson Airport, but at midday there were no signs of Stars flying out of the country. The players had refused to travel, demanding for their unpaid allowances, and even after they were paid, it emerged that the plane they were supposed to travel in had not been paid for, something that further delayed the flight. It had to take the minister's intervention for the issue to be sorted out.
Me and you are not technical enough to measure fatigue levels. But we've seen teams travel and play even on the same day We've seen Nigeria come here. I think the last time was 5th March 2013. They came very early in the morning. They played us late in the afternoon. They scored us 1 goal.
The flight is expected to take more than 8 hours to Praia, which is the capital city of Cape Verde. Harambee Stars takes on Cape Verde on Tuesday in the World Cup qualifiers second round return leg match at 10 p.m. local time, needing a draw of any kind to qualify to the group stages after their 1-0 victory in the first leg. The plane took off at 8 p.m. Abula Ahmed, KTN Sports.
The national sevens rugby team jetted back into the country after booking a spot in the Rio Olympics. Shujaa, who attributed their triumph to their hunger to take part in the Olympics for the first time, will now shift the focus to the Dubai Sevens, which will be taking place in December.
After emerging winners over Zimbabwe in a Navy final in South Africa, which saw Shujaa book a spot in the Rio Olympic with a 1917 win, the Kenyan team arrived back home Monday afternoon to a jubilant reception. Shujaa were unstoppable in the tournament, conceding only 6 tries in the 2-day showpiece, despite Zimbabwe giving them a run for their money. The team attributed their win to teamwork and the will to make Kenya proud.
For us, it was just about who wanted it more, and I think we've been trying to get that more. And for me, it's an achievement to win that at the point we won it, because we now know that we can play finals, and that was initially that was a problem.
We can now build on a team that will be able to present us well in the Olympics.
The team also paid tribute to Dennis Ombachi, who made the final try at depth to give Shujaa the win at the finals.
Ombachi definitely stood his ground, and he had promised that he was going to make it right from what he didn't do the last 2 seasons.
Kudos to Ombachi for giving us that try. He made a beautiful run, but I think it was a team effort all through for the 2 days.
With Kenya already having booked a spot in Rio, another test awaits in Dubai Sevens in 3 weeks' time. Shujaa hoping the win will give them a boost heading into the circuit.
We've got something to prove, so I think this is the right way to prove that everything that we do has a plan. Once we make one or two of those changes, then we should be able to go through that pool quite.
That's an interesting pool because anybody can get out of there. So all we have to do is get into the tournament with our heads firmly screwed on.
Placed in the same group as Kenya are England, Wales and Australia for the Dubai Sevens. Robinson Okenye, KTN Sports.
Okay, dark days may be ahead for athletics. This is after a report published on the Sunday Times alleged that athletics Vice President David Okeyo siphoned money from some of the sponsorship deals between the association and sportswear firm Nike. Prime, Ali Imran Mutoli says no. Withdrawing from Rome Statute is bringing dangerous dictatorial Madras regimes in the region. Mark Steve Mwenda says victims have already forgiven each other. Why should we dwell on past which is gone? Ruto and Sang should be released. Samuel Wainaina says no. It should first clear the case at hand. When it is done, they can consider withdrawing. Wilberforce Kirwa says Kenya should not withdraw from the Rome Statute. ICC will make politicians fear political violence and arrogance. Andrew Mawich says Kenya has been under Rome Statute for 19 years. No one complained before. Why is Jubilee complaining now? James Kijana says if at all they are truly innocent, they'll walk ICC, follow the process better. Baba Bari, that was some comment on the interview we had with Kipchumba Murkomen. Ruben Amunabi says, first it was a personal challenge, it became Kenyan, then Africa, now it's everybody's problem. Those are just some of your feedback on our big question tonight, whether or not you think Kenya should withdraw from the International Criminal Court. We thank you for writing in and for being part of KTN Prime. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night. I'm Linda Ogutu.